Welcome to Rice TVX. You've just tuned in for the latest transmission of Rice Against the Grain. And some of you might recognize today's guest. I am joined by Stan Barabas from Bodhisattva Love. It's been quite a while since we've done a video together, and I invited him on so that he would share his experiences, his research, and everything that's been going on with him in regards to the legal fiction and law. Before we get into it, take time to visit my website at ricetvx.com. There you can sign up for my mailing list so you can stay up to date on all things Rice. Once you've signed up for my mailing list, you will find links for my channels and socials towards the top of the website. Make sure you are subscribed to both of my YouTube channels, Rice Against the Grain and Rice TVX. If you want to support my work directly, as well as get early access, exclusive content for both channels, plus more, join my Patreon. I also wanted to share that I have recently partnered up with ITM Trading. So if you want to schedule a gold and silver strategy call to build your wealth shield and support Rice TVX, be sure to use my specific landing page that you see on the screen, and I will also include custom Calendly links and an 800 number that you can utilize to schedule your strategy call with the ITM trading professionals. And again, it is a way to support Rice TVX. I will include links in the video description for everything I just mentioned, as well as everything shared on today's video. All right, ladies and gentlemen, joining me on today's show is someone that some of you may recognize. I am joined by my old pal, Mr. Stan Barabas from Bodhisattva Love. Stan, what's going on, my friend?
Nothing much, man. How you doing, Rice?
I'm doing great, man, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, man. Accepting my invitation to talk about your legal fiction journey. You saw that I did those 3-part video series. You Can't Handle My Truth about the legal fiction. And me and you are on a very parallel path. When I first met you back in April, May of 2020, when we connected over the Greg Howlett stuff, we started doing interviews together. We interviewed Anna von Reitz together, Russell J. Gould together. I believe we did the interview with Carl Lentz together and several other interviews. And then you decided to get involved with American States Assembly. Now, before we get into that, for people who might be unfamiliar with you, now, prior to the journey of me and you connecting, you were doing a little bit of this research and some methods and some different things when it comes to the area of law. I know that you had worked with Kelby Smith. Do you mind sharing a little bit of your journey of what you were doing prior to us meeting? And then we can kind of dive into the American States Assembly part.
Yeah. So, well, looking back on it, I was really doing nothing in the study of law. I was just dabbling in some of these theories and, trying things out. I always knew, at a young age that something wasn't right. I just didn't know what it was. I couldn't put it together. I had no clue what it was. I just knew nothing seemed right. So, I started looking into these things and, I tried a couple things, very minimal, nothing that, got me anywhere that I accomplished anything with whatsoever. But it was very minimal. And my knowledge of this was like basically nothing. I look at it like I had no knowledge, because when I look back on it, when we first started in those 2 years, and I want to thank you for that, because what we did for those 2 years got me to the point to realize that I was very ignorant of everything. And
Likewise.
I knew nothing. I knew nothing. I knew absolutely nothing. I knew about stuff, but actually knowing, I didn't know anything. I had ideas and concepts, but I didn't know anything. So if people want to know.
The thing about our relationship is it's definitely, we're friends and, we care about each other, but it's definitely very mutually beneficial. I think that there's a lot of things where meeting me has helped you and meeting you has helped me, which I truly appreciate. And, I'm glad to have you as a friend, and I'm glad to have you as an ally and somebody who does the research in the area of the legal fiction, the law studies. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I told you when I was here, as I can see how the consciousness is working between us. And when we recognize that, we see how, the people we meet, it complements us. So if we, choose to endure that and look into that and exercise that, then we can move forward a lot quicker together. It's not just me and you, it's like all the other people involved. So your journey of trying to communicate and what you're doing is excellent, because a lot of people don't have the time to do this. So it's very great. I'm very grateful what you're doing, because you fulfill that side that I can't do, and I'm fulfilling the side that you can't do, and then we kind of just merge together. And this is kind of what we have here, right? And if I can go out on a limb here and say that a lot of the stuff that you're conveying, would you say that you've kind of gotten that through me saying, hey, Rice, check this guy, like I said, check out KL, he knows what he's talking about, through my research, right? So you want to listen to what he's got to say. And if this guy's telling you something, I'd say, well, I would double check with this information, because what
I do. I definitely look at you as having more knowledge than me. That's why when I went down to Florida at the end of March to go and record with KL the private teachings because of his cancer, which I've covered in the 3-part series of You Can't Handle My Truth. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, watch those videos. But the reason why I wanted you to go down with me was because you have more knowledge than me. And I figure between the two of us listening to KL, who ultimately I discovered through Crow 777. And I think Crow's started to follow his methods. I want to get in touch with that team and try to find out what the deal is with that. But I wanted you to go specifically because I look at myself as kind of being a little bit above beginner, not much above, but just kind of the higher level beginner. And I look at where you're at as being very intermediate, very mid-level. And KL, I kind of look at right under the top tier.
Right.
And I would put someone like Yusuf L in it right under the top tier as well. I'm not sure that, there's anybody right now that's like, if you grade this from like a 1 to 10, that there's too many 10s out there. I think there's, some 9s that are some solid 9s, but that was my thought process with that. And I figured, in retrospect, I think it worked out well because it got to solidify a lot of your research and it got to clear a lot of confusion for me. So that was definitely mutually beneficial.
You firsthand got to see my documented research. So, what I have to share, I don't need to be convinced by anybody because I've got documented information that, would state facts. So
right.
That's what when I unplugged 2 years ago, that's because when I realized that what I was doing was just nothing. I wasn't sharing good information, and I just needed to unplug and study and learn the law and learn the ways of this commercial world that has been built around us. And for anybody that tells you that, the United States isn't a corporation, that, it's written in there, right, in Title 28, 3215, that it's a federal corporation. You can read in Black's Law Dictionary. Here's a Black 6 that I got. You can see I've got tabs in here already. You start reading these definitions. I mean, you can't, it's a municipal corporation. And so a corporation is a business, and it's in the business of making money. And what is it in the business of making money for? The public. Because in 1933, the United States had its other bankruptcy. They took away the backing of the gold and silver from the dollar. So it's a, fiat currency. It's money by decree. It's a promissory note evidenced by the note itself that says Federal Reserve note. And if you just look up the definition in the Uniform Commercial Code of note, it's a negotiable instrument. So
right.
All we're doing is exchanging debt. I mean, it is difficult if you don't study it. And then once you comprehend it, it's just firsthand knowledge. There's no one can tell you anything else of what it is or what it isn't. And that's what I recommend to people is, fine, listen to anybody you want. However, if you're not doing your own diligence, your own work, and if you don't own your own or even get the PDFs of, I've got the 11th, 6th, and 1st, and I'm going to get the 4th and the 8th. And I can tell you what, when you read these dictionaries, it's a world of difference in definitions. And how about the one I told you, Rice? Constructive trust is a legal fiction.
Right. No, yeah, you had me looking up.
You read it yourself in the dictionary, right? You physically saw it yourself.
Mm-hmm. There's something else I can. I can
Go ahead.
attest to like when I came to stay at your place before we went to KL's and talking about your research, it is insane. It's a shelf full of 3-ring binders, separate subjects. It's intense. I told you like when we talked a little bit after like kind of reconnecting. I mean, we stayed in touch, but after reconnecting, I told you I was a little bit worried about your mental health because it seemed like you just went totally tinfoil hat. I was expecting when I came in your place to see like what you would see like up on a board with like
FBI board.
strings connecting. Yeah, like strings connecting all this stuff. I think he's the, and like I was really expecting that. So I was really glad to see that it wasn't as
Well,
bad
that's
as I
kind of
was.
like that's all up here. It's not on it's not manifested on a board, but that's all up here. But
But your
no, it's pretty
research
much
is
gotten.
impeccable, man. Your research is impeccable. And I mean, before we get into the unplugging, before we met, was Kelby Smith the first individual that you had done anything serious when it came to the law space?
Yeah, I want to unqualify that by saying it really isn't anything to do with law. It's more of a process that there's so many you got your copper moonstein shills, all these stills processes that claim that they can do something, and I didn't really understand it, but I trusted. Okay, it looks like this guy knows what he's talking about. It kind of makes sense. And then when you dig deeper into it, it's like, okay, I could see how this could work. So I just went ahead and did it. And that's kind of what I did with the AVR thing. It's like, okay, it looks like she knows what she's talking about. But to really know, I had to jump in. And
Right.
so what I did is I jumped in for 3 months. And in
Well, hold
that
on,
3 months,
pause, because now you're getting into American States Assembly. Are
okay,
you just
let me go back to Kelby.
when you got involved with Kelby, you went through because I haven't really looked in Kelby stuff. Kaya has said some good things about him. A lot of other people have mentioned some good things. This is not an endorsement of Kelby Smith, but you did some passport method, correct?
Right. I did a passport method, if you want to call it that. And I still have it. And did I ever do anything with it? No, because I really didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what to do with it, and I was traveling at the time. So I was nomading. Right when I finished that processes, I went and traveled for a year and just started driving around the country, and I was like, oh, I got it. Now I'm just going to go do this. And I kind of just forgot about it and didn't get involved with any of this stuff anymore. And until we started talking is when I started jumping back into it because I gave it all up. I gave up everything. I was just like, I just want to live. I kind of renounced everything. The van I'm in right now is the van I traveled in for, that year.
Yeah.
And so now I just kind of, now it's been a passion and it's kind of like life. And now I've started to unplug from it because now I know that I know what I know and I know how it works. I'm not an expert in it by any means, but I do have the basic fundamental comprehension to be able to convey it in a manner to where I feel comfortable enough in front of any kind of perceived authority where I could come off the cuff and not worry about it and not get myself in some kind of position where it's going to create any kind of controversy or argument or anything like that. Because one whole thing you learn about this process is you want to stay in honor at all costs, meaning you're not going to argue.
Right.
You're
Real
always
quick,
conditionally accepting.
100%. So with the passport thing, and then moving on, the passport, there's stars that are on the passport, and they range from I guess 1 to 5 stars. Yours, I believe, has 3, and when I saw KL's, his had 4. Was that right?
Yes, and I haven't found any solid concrete evidence on that
Of what the
anywhere.
difference of any of that is, whether
No, and they're
3, 4,
actually
or 5.
asterisks. People call
Okay.
them stars, but they're actually an asterisk, and it's right under the top, under the word passport. And I haven't seen a 5. People have claimed that they can get a 5. I think they go from 1 to 5. I think, I had one guy who didn't do any of this process. He was a security guy. He worked security. I think he was former military. And he had a 4, and he didn't do any of these processes. He didn't do copper moonshine stills. He didn't do any of it, but he had a 4. So who knows what it means? And I found one YouTube channel where some guy goes over the 1 through 5, but there was no solid evidence. And through my research, the only thing I would say is a FOIA request to possibly get that information. There's a lot of FOIA requests that I want to do. I think that's what anybody should do that really wants to have a true answer is send a FOIA request to the department you want the answer to, rather than some guru on YouTube that really doesn't know the answer unless he can show you proof of the answer, right?
Yeah.
And proof is in things like this, case law, Black's Law dictionaries, corpus juris secundums, secundis or secundums, whatever version you want to go with. But all these things, these are your solid proofs with these definitions. And so, yeah, I mean, just make sure that's what I had to do. I had to verify things because I started hearing things, realizing that I was so ignorant that I'm like, okay, I'm going to verify everything.
You got to fact check everything. Everything. Yeah. I've been saying that to people. You really do, because sometimes, I've been noticing a lot of people are just repeating things that other people are saying, and they're not really, and they think it's true. They're not fact checking it. And unfortunately it's just it causes more misinformation to be spread. Okay. So to fast forward to, you did the Kelby Smith process. Me and you met. I connected with you because of your interview with Greg Howlett, which I think was our reason for connecting. Not Howlett specifically, but that was the reason why we connected. Now, if I'm not mistaken, within maybe even our first conversation, but first two conversations, I think it was you that introduced me to war castles.
Right.
And then oddly enough, the universe put me into, I found Pimpy's investment chat, reached out to Pimpy to do some content with Pimpy, just because he was talking about the Nasera Jacera stuff back in 2020. And me, as an open-minded skeptic, I wanted to try to find out as much information as I could about this topic. And when I met Pimpy, he had talked to me about, he brought up Sergeant Robert Horton and War Castles and Russell J. Gould. And he ended up working with Sergeant Robert Horton's wife. And that's how I was able to connect up with Sergeant Robert Horton. It's just crazy how the universe has been putting things in front of both of us in this situation.
Divine synchronicities, yeah.
Because even when we stopped doing the interviews together, we still kept contact and we were still working together, but just not working together. Because ultimately, everything that I'm doing is for you, and everything you're doing is for me. And we have people that we're doing that with, Eric included. There's a small group of us that are really, really looking out for one another with our research. So splintering off was, I think, a blessing in disguise for all of us. Now, before you decided to do and I want to get into America States Assembly, but before you did that, you had your YouTube channel, and I was just thinking about this, and I'm glad that I looked it up because it's still there. Your channel on Odysee still exists, but you got rid of your YouTube channel. What was your reasoning for getting rid of the YouTube channel, to explain to people who may not understand? And then I will have a link for your Odysee channel, so if people want to check out your previous videos, the stuff that we've done together, because a lot of the stuff I don't have posted anymore.
Yeah, I really appreciate Odysee for being able to download everything all at once. So that's everything that from that point back that I ever did. So my reason for deleting is when I started to realize, all this stuff the last 2 years that was going on, I did not want to support whatsoever these platforms. So I got rid of all these. Is that when I still had long hair?
Yeah.
So I got rid of all those platforms, the Facebook, the Instagrams, the everything. The only one I'm holding on to now is Telegram, and that soon may be going once I get my other side bettered, more convenient for those of you who want to communicate with me, which is only like less than a handful of people right now. But I'm really starting to grasp this public-private, difference, and where, I would rather just keep my stuff in the private. Now, right now, obviously, I'm in the public, and I'm sharing my story with the public, but I'm not going to share private things with the public.
Right.
What I feel that it stay private.
I was going to say, you're going to be, I know you're conscientious of what you would say in the private versus the public. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate you obviously, but the fact that you did unplug, I appreciate you. Because I think you sharing your journey with what took place for you personally with American States Assembly and what you discovered, by looking at other individuals, I think that information is valuable for other people. Hopefully it would have avoid people from making some of the same mistakes, or maybe even prevent some of these people from being involved with certain aspects of this space.
Well, no, and like I said, what you're doing is great because it's going to help, people who want to listen, actually, because there's a lot of people that still don't listen. Even when I unplugged from the AVR thing, I said, hey, look, man, you might want to look outside of this box and check this out, because that 3 months, I was always asking questions. I wasn't just a yes man. I was just like, hey, what about this? And I had conversations with people all the time, all over the United States.
Well, you were heavily involved in the Florida Assembly, as far as I'm
Well, I
aware.
was,
Like
I was studying to become
deep.
that's what I needed to do. I needed to know how this thing really worked and if it was what they were claiming it was, right? Well, to sum it up, obviously, I have nothing to do with it anymore. So that should be your answer. And I'm not going to talk anything bad about anyone or anything. I'm just going to say, if you're going through this, all the people that Rice is kind of falling through, just know that kind of comes through me as well, because we talk and he does his own research. He corroborates what I say, and through his own interactions, we've kind of funneled this down. So it's not just Rice, it's the information he's getting, not just from me, but from others, to feed back to you guys so you can see what to avoid, because this is very time consuming. And if you want to get straight to the grit, I can tell you, everything else is distraction. There are some people that are doing good things, but they're only focused on a small area, and they're not giving you the full big picture, right? They're still focusing on certain aspects of like procedure within the public court, but not sharing the difference between the public and private, and how to utilize the private remedies that are available, should you choose to utilize them, and they are available. And they're not easy, and don't expect because you think you're going to spend 1 hour on a YouTube video. No, it's been 3 years and I haven't even started implementing 99% of what I've learned. Right.
So what was it about American States Assembly that attracted you to want to get involved? And the other part to the question is, when you started questioning things or started asking questions, did you have any blowback for that as well?
Oh, absolutely.
But what
I
what
didn't
brought
argue with
you?
anybody. I just started to
Got
see,
you? What got you involved?
So what got me involved is I had a friend send me a 3-hour video of Anna von Reitz talking about stuff. I think she was in Texas or whatever. And then I started reading articles, and it's compelling. I mean, obviously, when you read it and you're like, this woman's been doing this 40 years, she must know what she's talking about.
She's
and then
intelligent.
you go see, and it all parallels a lot of the stuff you'll find anywhere else, and you can reference things and be like, okay, this matches up. But then when you really get into it, it's like, wait a minute, there's really it's like just a big circle jerk. You know what I mean? There's really nothing taking you anywhere to accomplish anything.
There's nothing actually being done. That's what I realized.
What's that?
There's nothing actually really being done, is what you're saying. Like, it's just more of like
I was like, okay, where's the real
socialization?
Where's the real remedy in this? And everybody's coming at it, and like from different ways, and not everybody knows enough of anything. And it was just a big confusion, right? And a waste of time that I found. The 3 months, I don't consider my 3 months there a waste of time. I learned a lot through that process. Yeah. I learned a lot of what not to do and what to avoid, right? So I'm like, okay, now I know where the BS is. I know these terminologies. I know what to look out for. I know exactly what I know now to be a fact, right? And not just some hearsay. And so I can see through the BS. Like if someone's telling me something, I call them corpuses. I've got up to 6-inch 3-ring binders of documented research that these are my documented evidences. I call corpuses. They're already built. So if anybody ever wants to take me into court, I've already got my bodies of evidence pre-built. I don't have to scramble around and go, okay, what was that again?
And I can attest to seeing it too.
They're already organized digitally and manifested in print. I've printed it. I bought a printer. I paid for everything. I got it all sleeved, bound, in order, and in digital versions as well. So, I've got documented evidence. So if anybody wants to reference anything, okay, what do you want to ask me? What do you want to talk about? Let's reference right here. This is what it says. And if, All right, provide proof of claim otherwise. I'll accept your offer of some other kind of fact, but you show me proof of claim. Here's mine. You show me otherwise. Otherwise, that this is what's going to stand as truth right here, right now, until there can be something else that rebuts that fact.
So my thought process is, I mean, and I don't have any actual evidence that Honor von Reitz is controlled opposition, but that's my intuition telling me she's controlled opposition. But I've started to, when it comes, and I compare David Straight and Honor von Reitz because they're very parallel to each other. It's just like a male and a female version doing their own little thing, but it's very, very parallel, just not working together. And that also should ring alarm bells. But in order for them to be effective, them too, because they have been in the space for several years and have been gaining popularity, you have to mix in truth with lies. Is how I've been putting it. I don't know if you agree with that, but even though you decided to get away from American States Assembly, what I'm ultimately saying for people who have discernment that use critical thinking, you can actually find good, useful information from these individuals, from all the teachers. I mean, in order for them to be effective, they have to have some truthful, good information there. And maybe the other information is not good on purpose. Maybe it's not purposefully. There could be a plethora of different situations that can put us into that. But with that being said, I don't encourage people that don't have critical thinking, that don't think for themselves, to sit there and muddy the waters by trying to learn from all these different people all at once, because then it's going to be really, really confusing for people.
What I would say is if those out there in the public are going through this, go ahead and listen to them all you want, but don't do anything. Listen.
Well, research, critical thinking,
research, yeah,
fact check the shit,
and then do your own diligence. But if you want to go to the people that are there's only one person that I know that's actually telling you the full story, and that's Yusuf L. He's got the experience of 30 years in and out of the federal courts, civil court, all of it. And you got someone
real world
experience, and he's not telling you to fill out it. He's not giving you some kind of process of a form. He's telling you, here's these processes. It's up to you, right, to figure out if they're factual or not. Because all I'm telling you is, hey, look, this is my experience. This is why I'm teaching this. But it's not only just because he's got a website called Secured Party. It doesn't mean that's all he talks about.
Right.
He gives you the full gamut. You have to dig in.
There's a lot
of You have to watch the videos. You got to listen. You have to listen to them, and you have to listen more than once. I have listened to his videos 20 times over.
I would even say take notes. Take notes.
And I take notes. And I timestamp key positions in those videos. So, I mean, it's very important. You got someone who has firsthand knowledge, direct experience. Just because you may not like his gangster hustler mentality or the way he talks is irrelevant.
I get it. I mean, it is abrasive for some people. Before we get too deep into Yusuf,
well, here's the setup, and I'll just settle with this. You think if you go in front of that judge or attorney, he's going to be all nice and sweet to you?
Absolutely not.
So you better get some thick skin in this. If you don't have thick skin and you're still using spiritual bypassing to think this is not necessary, I highly disagree. Because the only way to free this form from the subjection that's being submitted to every man and woman is to learn the law. And that does not mean to be an attorney. That means to learn the whole gamut of how this commercial world works. And it's just business. If you're still standing in the victim space, you're going about this all wrong. It's business. You got to become a businessman or a businesswoman. You got to learn to handle your commercial business. And that's what it is. It's not this one little pinpointed thing. Nationality is really nothing to do with it because it's business. That's a political question. When you get into the political side of it, that's a political question.
You're talking about status correction, right?
Right. That's just a very minuscule part of the big picture.
It is, but I kind of look at like all these different things, like when it comes to the variety of people talking about just the variety of common law, trust law, equity, contract law, maritime admiralty, private versus public, status corrections, secured party creditor, using the UCC. All of those things are tools in a toolbox, is the best way to describe it. And if, unless you want to be a tool specialist, where you're just specializing with one tool, like if you're doing a project, let's say you're building a table. If you're building a table, you're going to have certain supplies, certain materials, and certain tools. So let's say you have 4 legs that you've got to get attached to the actual tabletop itself, and you're screwing them into the bottom. How are you going to do that? Are you going to use a hammer?
Well, first you might want to read the instructions, like you go to IKEA, like you're saying, right?
Well, let's say you're building it. There is no instructions, but you get what I'm saying. If you're going to have to screw in a screw, you're not going to want to use a hammer. If you need to nail in a nail into a wall, you're not going to want to use a screwdriver.
It's still kind of an instruction, right? There's like you're saying, you're not going to do this with this, right? So the instruction, if you're making the table, you're making the instruction mentally. If you're buying it from someone else, they have to provide the public with the instruction, right? So because there's just people that are like, oh my gosh, I've never lifted a screwdriver in my life. What do I do? So they have all the tools, and then they have the equipment in there, like your screws, your washers, all the things that you have. Like you said, those are the pieces and the parts and the tools you need. And now you have the instructions how to put together. That's just like doing this. You need to read the instructions of the game. There's rules to the game. And in this commerce game, you're not going to stop it. If anybody's telling you that they're going to do some kind of court case, it's going to take down the system, and it's going to really look.
Or if somebody's going to take down the economic debt-based slave system and take on the law merchant.
That is not going to happen because it's too big. You think the Uniform Commercial Code is going to come subject itself to your one, little case that you made?
No. The Uniform Commercial Code has made UCC has become it's every state.
If you get that private remedy, it will not become public. They're not going to publish it. You'll get an in-camera. If you know what an in-camera is, that means in chambers. It's going to be private. If you walk into a courtroom, and your boy Yusuf El will tell you, he's from experience, he was told, if you walk into the courtroom and it's empty, they respect you. If you walk in it's full, they know. The reason why is if they know, they don't want the public to hear it because, first of all, let me say this too. Any federal agents or any of you public officials out there, I am not an enemy of the United States. The United States has everything they're doing right within their jurisdiction and within their purview delegated by the Constitution. They have the right to regulate commerce. If you people out there want to look at Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3, 9, and 17, just read those. Congress has the right to do what they're doing within their jurisdiction. If you don't understand jurisdiction and you don't understand the difference between the two jurisdictions that exist, the United States, the federal zone, and the United States, the states of the Union, and you don't even get started with anything. Don't do any paperwork or anything. It's going to take you up to 3 years till you even should file anything because you need to gain fundamental comprehension of how this whole system works. And you have the right to it. And if you can convey it, then you have no problem. If you're learning this and you're going out to drive without a license and going into court and arguing this, that, and the other, you're only just doing yourself a disservice. And you're making them have more firepower to call people that are educating themselves sovereign citizens, because you are literally acting like a belligerent sovereign citizen because you're claiming sovereignty when you still have U.S. citizenship. So that is, by definition, there's no definition of sovereign citizen anywhere in any Black's Law Dictionary or any corpus juris secundum or anything anywhere. That's some made up shit within the fiction world that they are telling you that you are acting like.
I know, I 100% agree. And I think it's important that people get that foundational knowledge, that you have a full comprehension of everything that took place. So that, because and this is the problem. This is why I say, like, if you're one of these individuals who are getting involved in trying to learn about this because you're in some legal problem, some law, you broke the law in some situation, whether your fault or you're not your fault or whatever the situation might be, you have CPS issues, you think you're going to get access to some trust account. I don't want to even have you watching my videos because there's nothing I can do to help you because you're not willing to help yourself.
Right.
The
You're
people
just
that are willing,
regurgitating, like you said, regurgitating
right?
some stuff you
Because
heard.
you, that's the one thing, and it's and I haven't said this very often, but it's very intimidating when you really think about the amount of information that you need to be able to learn, that you have to dive into. And you really have to put your big boy and your big girl pants on and take accountability. And part of that is studying this information, comprehending this information so that you can verbally express it and live it, because it's a combination of all the things. It's like you just can't get a piece of paper, a cookie cutter template, and say that you're an American state national and it's all good. Because if you don't understand what you did, if you don't really fully comprehend the paperwork aspect of what you supposedly did, it's not going to matter, because any police officer can take that paperwork and just rip it up. What are you going
That's
to do
form.
about it? So you got to be able to
That,
communicate that information.
right. That's the what you would call form over substance. You can have the best form in the world. It could have the best language in there. Man, I got the best form, right? But if you can't convey that form, that's just a piece of paper with some words on it because you don't know nothing about law. You haven't
And
learned a thing.
convey is like a legal term for communication
Right.
to
You
be able
can't
to.
convey. You can't stand on what your piece of paper says. You think they're just going to say and read that and go, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir.
You're
Have a
right.
nice day." No, I don't think so because
Yeah.
you're probably holding one, a driver's license. Two, you're probably using a social security number. You probably have a voter registration, and on every application you ever signed, you check the mark U.S. citizen, and they've got all the evidence that you are a U.S. citizen. And so now they're like, well, wait a minute, you're saying you're this, but you're claiming this. It
Right.
doesn't
And
add up.
right. Like you can't get the benefits and privileges. Like you can't pick and choose what you're going to get here. So that's where having a
Right.
full
You can't have your
comprehension
cake
of
and eat it
this,
too. Right.
because the situation, without talking negatively about David Straight's arrest, he apparently got arrested, something to do with driving around or traveling, however people want to put it, with tags that he or someone else created. Um, with that being said, Yusuf said it and KL teaches it, and you're kind of on the same page of why would you even do that? Why would you be belligerent and drive without the proper things that's required for you to drive or travel per the DMV? And there are ways, once you understand and comprehend how this stuff works, that you can create your own game piece for the board. And you can actually do all the things that appease the system, but it's not you, the living man. It's you utilizing your straw man, your artificial entity, as the interaction with the world of commerce. Would you say that's correct?
If you're specifically talking about what would people would call the right to travel, I can think of many ways to go about doing it, and I can think of many ways of not going about doing it. And one is just taking your stuff off the car and claiming that you have the right when you haven't done anything fundamentally to exercise that right. Because there's a lot to untie to that, first of all. And without, going into a big thing about this is, if you understand, it's the law of contracts. Contracts make the law. So if you when you dig in, and I'm not going to tell you how to do it because it doesn't matter, because the majority of people listening to this video will not take the time to accomplish, to get to the point where I've gotten to, or many, not that many, but the ones who have. It requires it's study, it's university. You have to go to college. You have to initiate yourself to study and learn, and it's not going to happen overnight. We're talking 3 years at a minimum just to finally wrap your head to where you can be able to convey it. And anybody who has done this long will tell you the same thing. It takes about 3 years, and that's
Well,
if you're diligent.
and now, I mean, it's been about 3 years for me solidly, like with the journey with you. And I finally am feeling like I'm getting a grasp of it. And now I'm starting to want to apply some of these methods, where some of the people who were watching my videos were like applying methods left and right. I had somebody that lives here in Winston-Salem that told me that, I don't know the specifics, and I'm paraphrasing this because I can't remember the complete conversation, but they listened to some of my conversations with KL and Robert Michael and decided to do something with their bank and their mortgage, like sending some information. And they thought they might have really, really screwed up. And I asked the person, like, one, if you know me and you know that I'm local to you, why wouldn't you have at least reached out to me before you did any of this stuff? Like, I've interviewed both of those guys and I've not followed anything up to that point that either one of those guys said. And since me and Robert Michael have had our disagreements and fallout, obviously I don't support people who aren't honorable, but it's taken me this long to finally say I want to apply these methods. And with KL's situation, kind of like everybody else, it's like I can't get the proof that I want from someone else. All I can do is apply those methods myself to get the proof by me doing it. And the reason why I'm personally, have gravitated towards KL's methods is just because he's been able to back up a lot of what he's saying with information that I can fact check, which is really important to me as an open-minded skeptic.
Well,
So
even you
go
as a
ahead.
friend, I would say, Rice, you haven't actually done any studying. You've been researching. You haven't studied yet. You
No, I
haven't done
haven't.
any studying yet.
Not
I know you
full-on
haven't.
studying, no.
Yeah, I know you haven't. So my point to all of you out there who want to try to endure this, don't jump into anything, because even you want to talk about KL, yes, that's the one guy I will tell you that you want to listen to. But you notice KL isn't selling anything. He's educating you, right? He's educating you. And if you want to contact him for something, then there's a process that you have to go through, right? But he ain't selling you nothing. He's educating you. In all his videos, he's telling you the history, right, of why you have these things.
No,
Right?
but
He's
ultimately he
educating you.
does charge for his private teachings, and I don't have a
Right.
problem with
He
people
should.
charging.
Everyone should. This is, look, people think freedom is free. Freedom is not free.
No, and people
People have
don't
to fight.
value anything free either.
People have to fight for their freedom,
If
and you have to
something is
educate
given
yourself
to
for
them,
freedom.
people don't value it
No,
generally.
they're not. And the people expect that someone like me, who spent literally every waking minute for the last almost 3 years researching, documenting, you think I'm just going to give this information to you so you can go out and act ignorantly and
Right.
then, do some dumb stuff and then make me look? No, I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen. If you want to talk to me, then we create a contract, right? However that is, privately, and then whatever we need to talk about, it's not going to be one thing, because there's a lot to this whole thing, right? And you have the right to contract. And when you understand that, going back to what you asked about the right to travel thing, and this goes with anything that has to do with any government contract, is you have to create the contract. And there's a way that you do that when you learn how things really work. And when you learn how really things do, you learn how to create that contract. So when those things do happen, they already know that, oh, this guy's already been through the gamut. He's already put things on notice. Have a good day, sir.
Right.
Because you did all the proper steps ahead of time, rather than just jumping into it and trying to claim something when you have all this other stuff claiming otherwise, and you're just being ignorant. And ignorance, by definition, just means that you don't have the facts. You have no conscious facts of anything. You're just believing something. And just read the definition of believe and perceive, right? And two different things. I perceive things now. I have conscious knowledge of these things and facts. It's not something that someone told me, like, hey, David Straight sounds good, man. He sounds good. He's like compelling. Russell J. Gould, when you watch Workhouses, is compelling. David Wynn Miller is compelling. All these other people, and they're all compelling information, but there's no real education there. There's nothing. None of them teach you really how to accomplish anything, and they can't teach you in a weekend, right? They can give you information that you can marinate on, but you have to do the diligence into that, and it's all bits and pieces. Because I've been to a seminar, I've been to a straight seminar, I've, delved in for 3 months with the AVR and longer, and I found that there's really nothing there that gets you to the end where you can accomplish something.
Is
And a
that
lot of people
ultimately,
tried.
I'm sorry, is that
A
ultimately
lot of
what
people
led,
tried this for failure. Is my point.
repeat what you just said?
A lot of people have tried these things and they've gotten nowhere.
Right.
And that's when they realize they stop listening and they go, wait a minute, now I need to look somewhere else.
So is that what ultimately led you to step away from American States Assembly, and then what got you involved? How did you fall into the Yusuf stuff? Because we've talked about Yusuf throughout the years, but what made you leave ASA? And I know you didn't just jump from ASA to the Yusuf stuff, but what attracted you about Yusuf after you answer what made you leave ASA?
Well, through the whole ASA thing, I was continually researching other things, listening to other angles and other things. And then I would question and be like, okay, what about this? And then, people are just, well, she said, and she says this. And I'm like, okay, I can't talk to you because you obviously can't think outside the box and something isn't adding up here. So I got to talk to someone else. So, talk to other people. Then I come to realize this is just a big waste of time. I'm not going to get anywhere with this. Nobody's going to get anywhere with it. It's not going to go anywhere. One. Two, it's just not going to go anywhere. Three, it's not going to go anywhere. So I continued to research, and as I listened to others, one being Yusuf L, is when I started to hear his experiences, because I joined his university. I went to his online courses and his live classes 3, 4, 5, 6 nights a week, whatever they were. And I started to realize that this is the only individual out here that's telling you really how things work, because he's got firsthand knowledge. So when you have someone that's telling you their direct experience, now, no, he does not going to go show you some court case or some paperwork. Don't expect that, because all these things are private matters. When people say, well, show me the proof. Public, private. You people in the public are never going to see it, because the people in the public are never going to announce to you that, hey, Mr. Barabbas over there won his right to travel case. We're going to post it in the paper. Congratulations on him. But the rest of you are idiots. No, I don't think so. That's going to be an in-camera hearing, or even not that. They might just dismiss it, because they'll pick, when you listen to people that have been through these things already, they're going to dismiss anything by other means. Oh, we forgot to sign this document, or we administratively did this incorrectly, so we got to dismiss this case. They're going to make up some other excuse.
They would
You
rather
have to
do that than
understand,
have you argue it in front of the public.
that's not going to happen.
Right.
And when the people that do try to do that, that's when you get strong armed, because that's when people end up getting axed or whatever, because you think you're going to change it. You're not going to change it. It's too big. It's bigger than you.
Yeah,
You
it's
just got
like,
to learn how to play with the game and shut the hell up.
it's the kind of the saying of like when you've got weeds growing in your crop. I mean, at some point you're going to destroy the crop for taking out the weeds. So you just kind of got to let them grow together.
Well, I
And then,
mean, you
and
got
then
to
when it comes
strategically
time, you
take them out,
separate.
right? You don't want to just go dig it all up because you don't want to destroy the crop, but you can strategically take them out or use the proper things, but using the proper things,
Right.
getting educated on the fundamentals first. You got to get the fundamentals down. Once you get the fundamentals down, then you can start growing out. But if you don't know the fundamentals, then one of the fundamentals is, there's a document out there called Creditors and Their Bonds. Just start there. If you don't think accepted for value is real, look up uslegal.com. Acceptance for value. It's right there on US Legal. All the people telling you, oh, that's not true, this is not true, because you haven't done any of your own diligence. You don't know what you're talking about. But fine, because you're the person that's never going to accomplish anything in this subject matter. So,
Right.
it's not for me to get everybody to learn and think what I know. I don't care, really, because I know what I know, and I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything, especially in the public, because the majority of the public is ignorant.
And I'm glad that you said that, because, and I know some people might think that sounds harsh, but I've come to the same realization. That's why I said, like, if you're not somebody who's willing to put in the work, that genuinely wants to learn this information so that you can fully be capable of handling your business, then you're the kind of individual that I would like to be able to assist you and have you assist me on our journeys. Because otherwise, if you're not going to put the work into it, you are exactly ignorant. A
And
lot of
if you do,
people are wanting that savior. That they don't want to put the work in themselves. They don't want to be fully accountable, and they want someone else to save them. That's why people are joining these groups with their Anna von Reitzes, their David Straights, their Russell J. Goulds, because they think that Anna von Reitz, David Straight, and Russell J. Gould is going to save them so they don't have to save themselves.
Look,
which is, I think, a very sad way of going about this.
For everyone out there, no one but you can present yourself in court. You can get representation through an attorney, but when you do understand, just look, anybody, please just go to the law. This is the first thing I looked up when I went to the law library. It was Corpus Juris Secundum 7, Section 4, subsection 4, whatever it is, and the definition of attorney. And I had a copy. It looked like it was a copy straight from the book, but I said, you know what? This is the very first thing I'm going to look up when I go to the law library. And I copied 10 pages out of that book, that Corpus Juris Secundum Section 7, or Volume 7. In Section 4, it talks about attorney in the definition, and you find some other interesting stuff in that whole section, and prior to it and just thereafter. And you start reading in these books in the law library. Go to the law library, start learning stuff. Stop repeating and gurgitating. I don't care who it is. I don't care if this guy has been on YouTube for 10 years, even Yusuf. Just do your own diligence. You're never going to accomplish anything if you don't do the work. If you're constantly seeking out someone to give you some kind of remedy paperwork, that's a one, all-in-one thing, even a trust. If you're filling out a trust and someone tells you, oh, you can change the name later, you can change the trustee, that's a revocable trust. Okay? If you do an irrevocable trust, you can never change it. Once you sign it on the dotted line there, it's done. It's over. That's a true private common law. There's statutory irrevocable trust, but you want a true private irrevocable common law trust. And all the people out there selling you trusts, telling you can change stuff, look, I don't know what to tell you, okay? You're ignorant. That's all I can tell you, is you're ignorant because you haven't studied anything on your own.
No, and it's, I mean, it goes very deep, and it's not even very deceptive of like how this how the federal government kind of took over and the corporation took control of everything, and how we became a legislative democracy versus the republic. There is really nothing illegal about what was done. Again, like you said, it's just a matter of us being ignorant and not educating ourselves. And that might be on purpose, like the education system, the conditioning that we're growing up with, but that still is no excuse for you being given this information and being told that you need to put the work in. Like, you need to actually do work. And that's where I'm gearing up, man. I mean, you are right. I haven't really done like any real true studying. A lot of it's just been like other people's information, researching it, and doing fact checking with the information. I'm trying to get myself set up with time because of both channels to be able to. I think I just lost Stan. All right, what happened?
I have no idea. I guess my internet thing was working, but it just shut off somehow. I don't know where, the computer or whatever, but I was getting signal on my router. Yeah, it was weird. So where did we end up? Where we
I don't know, man. It's been so long since you took your time to reconnect. I forgot what the hell we were talking about, but we do need to wrap up.
I was talking about people in trust. So I was mentioning the people that are being told that they can, switch the trustees of the trust and all that. That's a revocable trust, and that's where we ended.
Okay. And I did share information with passingbucks.com if people want to try to learn some more information about proper trust, and I'll just kind of leave it at that. I may kind of discuss more information about the website, and I did buy the first volume of The Art of Passing the Buck, so I will be diving into that. That's on my list of books to read. Okay, so
are we recording? I guess we're live right now.
Yeah, we're still recording. I just had to edit that part out, but I'll leave it in. I'm going to leave the unedited portion for the patrons and private members so they get to see it. I was like just bullshitting while you were reconnecting, so.
All right, let me just finish what I was saying. So, there's a lot of people that I talk to that are, saying, oh, I'm doing this trust, and they're telling me that I can change from what I understand, and I haven't delved into trust study law. That's a whole nother topic yet. I got very basic fundamentals of it, but I haven't dug into trust law studies. But from what I have learned and what makes sense to me is that, you got your statutory and your common law. And if it's revocable, it's revocable. That's all there is to it. If you can switch something in it, that's a revocable trust, meaning a judge can revoke the trust.
It's a statutory trust, not a common law trust.
Well, private, if it's irrevocable, meaning it can't be changed, and you've done it non-statutory.
But a revocable trust would be statutory, though, right?
I think. I mean, I don't know.
Can you have a common law revocable trust?
You probably. It's
Okay.
like, yeah, I think you can, because you can have a revocable or irrevocable, those two type of trust. A lot of people like to call them express trust, but there's no really thing called an express trust. A trust is either expressed or implied, just like anything else. It's implied that you're a U.S. citizen all the time, right? Unless you express otherwise, and you have the, you have done the diligence and the work to rebut those presumptions properly. But yeah, I just wanted to let people know that, hey, just be careful, because if someone's telling you can change something, by default, that's a revocable trust, which means it can be revoked by anyone at any time, especially public officials. So just beware.
Well, and also, I know you haven't done a lot of studying when it comes to the other kind of trust, but you were telling me basically and listening to a couple of different videos that it would take several years just to kind of get something like that set up properly.
Well, think about it, right? So if you're trying to construct the trust indenture or the corpus of the trust, and it's your family, don't you think that you would have to like literally sit down and go, all right, so I'm literally writing the law for my trust, this because that's a contract. If you write that, you're going to like want to think through this stuff. So it's not something that you're going to fill out a boilerplate document and be one and done. It's like you need to really think about, okay, so if I have children, and then if I have my children have children, how, I got to think about all the ways that I want this to work, because you're writing the law. You're writing the law of that contract.
As the grantor.
You become God, basically, right? Gwen Wyckoff will tell you, is like you do, because if you create the contract and it's irrevocable, you're going to have to really think about that. You're going to have all those elements and everything covered, because once it's created, you can't change it. It's done, signed, sealed, delivered. So it's very important. Like, this is a life-changing endeavor, and it has nothing to do with tax evasion or tax avoidance, even though tax avoidance may be a default benefit of your trust, because now, the taxes only get through distribution to the beneficiaries once that's done. So the grantor's relieved of a lot of that stuff, right? So now that's just a byproduct of it. But the whole point of a trust is for the benefit of the beneficiaries, meaning your progeny, your life, your blood, your lifeblood, your family. And that's generational wealth. And why do you think you get taxed 50%, 60%, 70% on if you're intestate? Because obviously people in power don't want anybody else to be in power. So they're going to say, hey, we can't let them build generational wealth. So let's just cut it down 50, 60% every time. And if they're intestate, we'll just take it all and then we'll distribute it amongst us. Right? So It's just business. And if you don't know your business, you're going to be taxed for someone else, which is fair. If I'm going to say, look, I just rather watch Netflix, football, and do everything else that, the normal American does. And I don't want to study nothing. So I'll hire an attorney and I'll have him handle my affairs, because I'm too ignorant to handle my own commercial affairs and handle my own estate. I want someone else to administer my estate for me. Well, the United States has everything you need. They got attorneys, they got their administrative courts, they got all that stuff. So they say, hey, no problem. But there's a tax for the benefit and privilege to use our services. There's a tax for all that. And if if you choose to use them, this is the rules. This is the rules of the game. If you want to stay in this jurisdiction and have your daddy take your parents, the law parents betray you, we'll take care of you. We'll be your daddy. You'll be the ward of the state and the infant throughout your entire life, because you haven't learned anything. So we're going to do it all for you. So don't complain. And when you complain, we're going to smack you down, because you waived all your fundamental rights under the Creator to have the benefits and privileges of the United States federal jurisdiction. That's your choice. That's a voluntary choice. Involuntary servitude is illegal, but voluntary servitude is not, meaning you're signing all the contracts. You want the benefits and privileges. You want to accept the Social Security. You want to keep that driver's license to be subject to the codes. and all that stuff, and then everything else, the Social Security, the driver's license, the voter registration. You want to vote for the legislative democracy within that jurisdiction, then that's what you get. If you think you're going to go into their zone and then claim otherwise, well, then that's why you have what that whole J6 situation is. Look, they did. They're U.S. citizens. They have no rights. They're subject to the corporation, the business. You're an employee, a franchisee of this corporation. They're not going to tell you how it works, but that's how it works. So you got to understand that you are doing it to yourself. And then until you step up and put in the time to learn how the commercial world works, what rights the public has and what rights the private has, then you're never going to get anywhere. You can, debate Rice telling you all these things, but if you're not going to dig in and learn anything for yourself, then I don't even want to talk to you because I don't want to waste my time.
I feel you, dude. Hey, when you mentioned J6, there was something that somebody posted in my Telegram group, and it was from a tweet. Apparently in and I didn't know this, in 1932, a bunch of veterans went to DC to protest at the Capitol. It was a very, very parallel type situation. And a lot of it had to do with they were paid in not in actual currencies, but like a kind of like an IOU. I know Federal Reserve notes are IOUs in itself, but I think it was an IOU on an IOU. And they needed the funds because they had bills to pay and stuff, and they were protesting in Washington D.C. in 1932. I just thought that was interesting when you mentioned it.
That is interesting.
His history definitely seems to repeat itself, and we don't seem to learn from lessons. And it seems like once the older people that die off, that experience those tragedies, we don't remember them, and we just keep repeating the same things. That's kind of like where that sociological study of the fourth turning kind of comes in, because the saculums are 80 to 100 year periods roughly that comprise of four turnings that are roughly like 20 to 25 years each average. Yeah. And by the time you get from the first turning to the last turning, the people that were young in the first turning are old and dying in the last turning. So it's like the information doesn't get passed on properly. So that's where it's nothing new under the sun, and where we've had these repetitive things. So it's really interesting.
No, absolutely. When you look at the history, they call it the 100-Year Wars, right? So every 100 years they do a reset. Now, however that reset looks, which obviously it kind of just parallels the Great Reset that these other corporations are talking about, which are corporations of the corporation, which is a government providing governmental services, right? So now these corporations are saying, all right, we're in the fourth turning. We're in that 70, 80, 100-year period. Now it's time to reset, because they're resetting the consciousness. They're resetting the everything, because you can't let that continue on, because see, right now with the internet and the technology, people are becoming too wise. Right? They're becoming too aware. So now what do you got to do? You got to shut it all down, mix it up, change things up, create psychological confusion. And what all this YouTube stuff, not all of it, not yours, but a lot of the stuff that we were doing prior and everybody else that's doing it is adding to that confusion, because we're not really studying anything until we really study something. We're just talking and debating things, and there's no substance. Remember when I told you, and I said, Rice, it's because we're doing a big circle of nothing. Remember I told you that, and you said, you really believe that? And I said, yes. Remember you asked me that about a year or 2 years ago? And because that's when I realized, I said, I don't know a damn thing, so I'm just talking a bunch of gibberish and not getting anywhere and not really helping anybody or myself. So I just need to pull out, unplug, and then do the work. That's the only way I'm going to learn.
And I respect what you're saying. Now, for just on my own end, defensively, just saying, it's been a public learning process for me. So people can see, like, from the beginning of me and you doing interviews with people to this interview, there's been a progression of information that I've acquired that's got me to where I am. So even though it's kind of running in circles and some of the stuff may seem like a waste of time, it's not, because it's helped to set a foundation.
there's always things to learn within that, right? So I'm not like belittling it, even though it sounds like I did, but
No,
I
no,
have
no. I
learned
wasn't
from all that
taking this
too.
belittling. I'm just trying to parallel our
I
journey.
was clarifying for myself for what I'm saying and how I'm conveying, right? So I learned through that whole process. That's why I realized I had to unplug. And not everybody's going to be able to do what I do because I've afforded myself a very free and simple life, right? Prior to when me and you met, I already had started structuring my life to a simple life, but now it's about to re-engage and engage as a businessman. So now it's a whole different, like I'm growing up, right? I'm actually starting to grow up now, right? 50 years old and I'm just finally starting to grow up. So
48.
now,
I'm the same boat.
and then it's like now finally I'm realizing, okay, I always knew there was something wrong. Now I finally know what's wrong and I know what to do. But because before I never wanted to engage because I never knew what was wrong and I knew it was something wrong and I didn't want to engage because I knew something was wrong. So now I know how to engage and I know the problems. So I know the solutions around all the problems. And that's how I plan on moving forward in my private capacity, right? As the
Respect it.
man doing what I know is right? And can convey it properly and not to create any controversy. That's why I'm not going to come out here in the public and say, oh, this is what you should do. This is what you need to do and do this, do that. No, that's not going to happen. You'll never get that from me.
Right.
But I will share with you my past experiences, obviously, like I am now. And hopefully it'll, and again, I would like to think that, more than 1% will actually be able to implement this because I know everybody's busy, but that's the whole part of the game is to keep you busy and distracted. If you can start whittling away like I have, because I've done this and it's not easy. When you start whittling away at these things, you're going to realize how first difficult it is. And then once you're able to start to breathe and realize, okay, now I've eliminated all these things that are tying me down, making me have to work all the time, because you can still have a family and do this. There's people, there's videos out there of people that just start downsizing, start rethinking life and really what you're doing and the time you're spending and what you're spending it on. And this is to me, what we're talking about here and the actual substance of the subject matter is the most important thing every human being needs to endeavor, because
I agree.
it's biblical, it's spiritual, and when you look at the Bible, it is the first book of law. It's not a religious component, and that gets all segued off. It's literally the first book of law.
Right. All right, my friend. Well, look, I got that premiere happening in like 22 minutes. We're gonna get ready to wrap this one up. I appreciate you making the time to do this. Any final thoughts? Any bit of advice that you want to give to anybody who's watching this, that's on this journey, that's been watching our interviews, that's interested in this topic? What would you leave people with some advice, final words, Mr. Barabas?
Well, kind of like I said before, if you want, continue to just listen to all these other things, because that way you'll know, and you can have you know conversations with others regarding these other people if you want to continue on. If you want to just get straight to it, Rice has already done the work to kind of guide you to get out of the weeds and get straight to it if you want to skip all that. But if you want to go ahead and continue to listen to them, listen to them. That way you can make the decision for yourself, see what they're talking about, see the faults, see what's missing. But really, the time should really spent digging in on the places and the people that are telling you the facts and the knowledge you need to learn. And I'll tell you right now, it's not easy. It's going to take a lot of time and effort, and don't expect it to happen within less than 3 years. So good luck to everyone out there who actually puts in the work, and maybe we'll see you out here sometime in the business world.
I do have really two quick questions now. First one is, on looking at this picture on your Odysee channel, the van. That is the van that you're currently inside of right now, right?
That's correct.
Cool. And then the other question is, you mentioned Yusuf L. I haven't personally taken any of his courses, any of that kind of stuff. It's not exactly inexpensive, but it's not exactly too expensive. But I would say, based off what you've told me, it seems like it would be worth, if people can afford it, to get involved with the classes, which do cost money. What are your thoughts on Yusuf's SPC University and what he offers with the courses?
Well, let me put it this way. If $119 spread over the course of a month for you to get in for 1 month, because you're not dedicated, because you can pause. If he still has that feature, you can pause your membership, stop payment, and then continue when you're ready. Because I'll tell you, we're all on different levels of comprehension. And I tell you, I'm not the best at comprehending easily. It takes me a while to absorb stuff and understand things. So I'm not as quick as other people. There are many other people that are way quicker than me, and you may get this a lot faster than I did. But I'm very thorough, and that's kind of one of my downfalls because it sets me back. But for you, if you wanted to do even 1 week, you can do a $35 if he's doing classes during the week now because he took time off. If he just do $35, get in for a week, download as much as you can. But just by downloading PDFs is not going to get you where you need to be. You got to comprehend all the verbiage. You got to start you invest in hard dictionaries. I recommend Black 6 is a good one to start with. They're going to sell it for $320 on Amazon. I got this for $60. Some lady was offering it for $90. I made her an offer for $60. Great shape, $60. I got this thing. Best investment I ever made. Even the Black's Law 1 and the Black's Law 11th, because the definitions are not in all of them. They're different. So eventually you do, if you get the PDFs, Rice showed it the other day on his video, get all the volumes, get them all. And start going to the law library when you can to actually look into corpus juris secundums and all these other valuable, precious information that's there for you to endure to be able to understand and comprehend what you're up against here. And do not submit anything until you understand what you're doing. And I speak from firsthand experience, right? So the couple things that I've submitted lately is not until I fully understood. And it took me 20 to 30 times listening to the same videos, reading the same stuff over, reading statutes, reading law, going outside of gurus on YouTube and going to actual law websites, that attorneys and everything else, and reading the stuff. And then when you go, the light bulb clicks on, then you're like, I think I'm ready. I think I can convey this. If I'm challenged, I feel comfortable enough to stand upon this. Then that's when you should be able to submit something, but not until then, because you're just going to get yourselves in trouble, and then you're going to make a bad name, and you're taking up court resources for time that they really need stuff for. They do have their purpose, and just think of it that way. Stop victimhood, get into business. That's what I
handle your business. Handle your business.
Handle your business.
So I don't imagine that we're probably going to have a whole lot of public conversations beyond this. I mean, there may be something that comes up, but I would like to invite you on for some more conversations that we could do in the private that would just be available for Patreon. And the private members, because ultimately I'm going to be phasing out Patreon. But I think this is a good place to wrap up, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to explain your journey. Bear with me real quick and I'll just do the wrap up and stop recording. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, I'll have links down below. I only shared really one thing, so I'll have a link for Stan's Odysee channel if you guys want to check out the Bodhisattva Love channel. I would encourage you guys to, because who knows, he might delete the channel. The cool thing about Odysee is you can download the videos, so check them out. Some of the videos are on my Odysee channel, but for the most part, a lot of the stuff that we were doing in regards to our War Castles videos aren't going to be re-uploaded to Rice Against the Grain, so it's an easier place to be able to find that information on Stan's YouTube or Odysee channel. So be sure to check that out. And I will leave you with this. I encourage you, as always, to be a blessing to others. Treat people how you want to be treated. Be the glitch that you want to see in the matrix, and be the change that you want to see in the world. And until next time, I'll see you on the other side, and practice change.